Little background on Hal Newman. Hal Newman used to work as, in fact, an ambulance attendee, worker, whatever we call them.
Paramedic, yeah.
Thank you, paramedic. That's a great term. And the service has become so bad here in the province of Quebec, and you probably know this because we've had stories about people waiting forever, or even some of the people who work as paramedics just saying, it's enough, I can't deal with this anymore. And that's a situation that he found himself in and decided to walk away. He's on the line right now. Hal, thanks so much for being here this afternoon.
Very welcome.
Can I want to make sure I got this right. So you reached the point where you had enough and you walked away, right?
Yeah, I'd always promised myself that when the role of being a paramedic stopped being, sorry, pardon the expression, but stopped being fun, stopped being enjoyable, that I would reserve the right to walk away. And finally, after 43 years, I reached the point where I just couldn't do it anymore. So I quote unquote retired as a paramedic, although retiring as a paramedic doesn't really mean retiring. So there you go.
Okay, but now obviously I'm going to assume, I think we both figured this had to do with the pandemic and how things got worse. Is that fair to say, or was this done independently of that?
Yeah, so the last 2 years of my career coincided with the pandemic, and it was extremely difficult, and the calls were tough, and the conditions were tough, brutal, and it's interesting that through my entire career, I always thought that I was going to emerge relatively unscathed. I stopped being a medic on December 15th. I started therapy like 3 weeks into January when I realized I was like a walking PTSD guy. So, yeah, it's not one of those careers where you get to walk away and shrug it all off.
I remember last time we spoke that you talked about that, about the burnout that you were feeling and the PTSD, and that it just stays with you. So are you still doing therapy, Hal? Has it gotten better, or is it still that bad?
No, I just stopped therapy actually, or I guess I'm on a pause because PTSD is not something that you just get cured of.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I learned how to recognize trigger points and how to, just how to deal with it. So I guess it's one of those things where you're in recovery forever.
So I want to go to what happened over the weekend. You went on a TVA show called Le Mot à l'Envers. What happened and what was the reaction?
Yeah, so that was pretty incredible. That was on Friday evening with Stéphane Bureau was the host, and they invited me on, and we talked about the last ambulance project and the crisis in pre-hospital care. And I don't think anything can prepare you for something like that. So, I walked away from the show. I thought it was I thought it was a good interview, and it was obviously all in French, and prior to the show, the people who contacted me, I'd get a dozen or so texts, maybe a couple of dozen a day, but it was always from paramedics. And then the floodgates opened after that show, and I'm well north of 1,000 messages, but they aren't from paramedics anymore. They're just from Quebecois, from people right across the province. And to be honest, there's some I don't even know how to respond to.
Well, I was going to say, give us an idea of what you're hearing, what those people are reaching out to you, asking or saying.
Sure. One woman wrote to me to say that she has a serious chronic illness, and the last time that she needed the paramedics, it took a long time, and she's asking me where she should move, where she could have a guaranteed decent response delay. How am I supposed to respond to that? I don't know. And it's heartbreaking, when someone's actually going to move because they're terrified of dying. Another older woman wrote to me to say that she hasn't had a GP since 2016, and she lives alone, and that she'll probably die alone because there'll be no one to call 911, no matter how long the paramedics take to get there.
Oh boy.
Another family wrote to say that they were involved in a car wreck in June 2021 on the North Shore, and the paramedics never arrived, and while they were waiting, a member of their family died. And could I find out more information? And it's just all like that. It's all of the stories that I kind of suspected were out there, but people weren't writing nonstop to tell me about.
You were living it from the paramedic perspective and hearing from other paramedics, and now you're hearing from the families. But I mean, Hal, I'm not a professional at all, but you can't take this on. I mean, you've already lived through so much and dealt with so much. You can't possibly take this on. I wish somehow our government could take it on. I wish they could read these messages. Are you thinking
which
that
begs
way?
the question, though, what's wrong? How broken is the system, Hal, that people are reaching out to you with these stories and you're hearing these now firsthand? Have you given up? Do we give up hope here that it will ever get better?
Yeah, no, look, I can't give up hope. I've been, slamming my head against the wall for 40-something years, so I don't want to give up hope. I think, it's Quebec. It's like, damn, we created and exported Cirque du Soleil. You're telling me we can't have a world-class emergency medical service?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not buying it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not giving up hope. I feel like we need to shake the tree, and we need to shake it. It can't just be Hal Newman shaking the tree. I'm going to need some help out there. And then Tasha, thank you. You're right. I can't handle it on my own. So I've been reaching out to journalists, journalism students, encouraging people to reach out to me because I've got too many story leads to handle, and I'd like to offload and have journalists follow up with these people. All of these people's stories deserve to be shared. The problem for me is that's not my full-time gig,
Mm-hmm.
and there are literally hundreds of them now. So I appreciate what you said, and I hear you completely. I can tell you that after Friday, the adrenaline buzz lasted for about a day, and then the exhaustion set in, and now it's just looking at the messages, and I'm like, good God, things are bad, and they're bad all over. There isn't a region of Quebec that's spared.
We're both sitting here shaking our heads at just how insane this story is, and how the fact that necessarily it doesn't get reported every day, but maybe
you're talking
this
about
kind of
it, Hal.
exactly, this kind of stuff will open people's eyes to it and maybe get someone in government to realize something needs to be done here. You're talking about people who had experiences. That doesn't even include, as you said before, people who did what you did, paramedics who are just walking away because they can't take it anymore.
I just heard from a young woman 5 years in as a paramedic, and I've actually had the privilege to work with her, and she's brilliant. She's the future of EMS, of emergency medical services in Quebec, and she resigned last week, and she's walking away, and that's just, it's heartbreaking. So it's like we have a huge problem with recruitment, we have a huge problem with retention. And then we have these young paramedics, and they all say the same thing. They all end their resignation letters with, "It's the most beautiful job in the world, but I just can't do it anymore."
We're both shaking our heads again.
We're out of time. We're bucked up
Sorry.
against the news. No, don't be. I mean, we need to hear about this, and we need to find out about it. And I hope we can touch base with you a little further down the road, and maybe when there's some good news to report here. Thank you so much, Hal, and keep up the amazing work that you do.
Thanks, Hal.
Okay, take care.
You bet. You too.